So within this lesson, we're going to continue pulling together all of our code. So combining our HTML, so we've got a basic HTML structure, and now we're just applying our styling to it. So our top styling, usually we start off with body. We set what we want as our body defaults. So whatever font family, our color, our background, our width, and again, whatever we're setting our body to, just getting rid of the margins, padding, borders in case they're being added in elsewhere. So we want to just set all of those to 0. And here we've got our hyperlinks. So our default hyperlink colors, when we do add in those hyperlinks within the template, they're going to be by default this color. And when you hover over them, they're going to have a background. So here I'm just going to add in a hyperlink there, just so we can see that styling at work. And when I refresh it, we see that in fact it stays underlined because we do want it to stand out as a hyperlink, and when we hover over it, it does turn blue. So we could also work a little bit better with the color schema in order to get rid of maybe these orange colors. So I'm going to actually go back into here and I'm going to remove this out from the visited color, because I don't want to have a different visited color. So here I'm just going to reset it, and it's going to look a little bit more presentable in line with the rest of the content of the text. So after that, we're going through. So that's what you normally should do right at the top. Set all of these defaults. So you've got your H1 tags if you want to have padding, or if you want to set them at a specific size, you do that. Same for paragraphs. So I've just set padding to 0, and then of course this can be adjusted to style it a little bit better. I've left spacing for images because again, sometimes with images you might want to place them at width 100%. So 100% of the available width, and that will save images from overlapping and going outside of our borders of our elements. So it saves us if an image is 1,000 pixels and we're trying to place it in a spot where we've only got 300, it'll go way outside of the content area. So we don't want that, and we want to resize the width. And when you resize the width, it's going to resize the dimensions as well. And then just below here, so we've got our navigation. So initially I think that we're going to set our navigation to be 100% so that it goes right across the entire page. So refreshing that again and bringing it out to 100%. You see that it does actually now contain the whole 100% width. So we want to have that block going across, and when we shrink it down, I think we did have it within our styling going to 100%. As well as our wrapper going to 100%, because we did have some fixed widths there. So just going to leave that for now, but we do have a fixed width on our wrapper, and again our wrapper is the one that contains all of the code. So we have fixed it to 960, and when it shrinks under 960 width, it just goes to 100%. And the reason is that if we left it at 960, then we'd have to scroll over to see the rest of the content, and it wouldn't work as well on smaller screens. So then after the so this is all of our navigation stuff, our wrapper, and our header. And as we mentioned before, we set a fixed height for the header because we did want to reserve that spacing around the header. We could do something like padding as well, margins, whatever we wanted to add in. So we could just do padding if we wanted to, remove out that. And again, depending on the design that you're working with, one might work better than the other. And just going through the code there to quickly see if, what's happening there. So again, because I'm on that smaller size, it's resetting that width, but when I do go out, I can see that now I am setting it on that padding, but I really did like that height a little bit better, so I'm going to keep that in. So what I've done here is I've got, essentially I just called them COLs, like columns, but as if they're not really particular columns. But again, you could work with it in the styling. So I just added to each section a class, And that's in order to split out those sections. I could very well just do section as well. So again, a lot of different ways to approach the same type of problem within styling. So again, you could just do the same type of thing and you get that same effect. So you definitely, you could actually just remove out all of these. So I'm gonna, and the whole idea is always to try to streamline as much as possible with your code. So again, this is a little bit more streamlined than what we had before, and I just was able to remove out some stuff that was not necessary by calling it section, because we've got section defined in it here anyway, and we were applying all those classes to the sections, so might as well just use section as the selector. And then here we do have our 3 sections, 1, 2, 3. So we're using ID for those because we do want to be able to distinguish them and identify them. And we're only looking to have one section 1, one section 2, and one section 3. And that was the reason for using ID, so we could distinguish between them and further stylize them. So we had set a couple fixed widths there, and as well for this one we had set a fixed width. And when we set footer as well, so we got our footer here at the bottom, so we've got our footer and we've got some ability to place some footer content in there. And then that's going to be all styled using footer. So here what we do have, we have maximum width 960. So we're keeping, we're setting our nav width, which we've already set to 100. So actually we don't need that one, but I just want to have that grouping. But so we don't necessarily need that one. But here we've got that nesting that we're using. So any navigation A, and we're resetting that width because we do have a fixed width there of 120. And those are the main things that you've got to watch out for when you're resetting the screen size, that you do have the ability to work with these widths and be able to readjust them as needed. And then lastly, so we're looking at anything between 960 and 600. This is what gets displayed. And if we shrink it down even more, so these are for all the mobile devices, 600. So this could possibly be for tablets, and then everything else could be for desktop. So again, there's different ways to breaking that down, and as well of the even smaller screens like the iPhones, usually they could be broken down at 480. So sometimes they don't perform well at 600. So you have to even break them down a little bit more. So that's just another media screen and max width at 480. But for this lesson, we're just going to keep it at these 3 different sizes to encompass everything that we're working with. So here we've got our header. So again, we had to readjust the size of our header because that 100 pix fixed width doesn't work as well when we really shrink it down under 600, and we want to really have a better sizing here for the header. And as well for the navigation buttons, we just want to keep them at 100%. So we could use a little bit more, maybe some padding there. So I'm just going to set 0 and 5. So it just sets that width of left and right. So it's given us a little bit more padding around there. And as well, maybe we could add in a margin. So that would just to split them off just a touch more. So I'm just going to do 2 pix margin. Again, sometimes you do have to play around with it, and just to make sure that you are doing it so that it fits in. So you might have to have different sizes and adjust the sizing accordingly. So what happened there, it actually had to bring contact to the next line. So I'm actually going to remove out a little bit of that padding, and then hopefully contact becomes within that line. And again, so if we were to shrink it down to 480, we probably would have some issues with the size of this text. Maybe we might have to hide this and add a mobile menu, again depending on what we want it to do. So here we've got our headings, so maybe we need to change H2 to make it smaller as well. So I'm just going to put comma H2 to shrink down those headings. so that they're not taking up as much space. Because on mobile, when you're designing for mobile, you've got to be really conscious of the real estate that you're using up. And then heading text, I've completely removed it, so I didn't want it there. So it only shows up when I get a little bit larger in size here. So when I get over that particular width, the heading text displays again. And then here I've just done a width of automatic, and I've done float none. So what I was doing over here is I was floating these sections to the left. So I'm just applying float none. So maybe I could even take that down there and just do section float none. And that way I could remove out actually all three of these, and we really should have that same effect there. So when I refresh it, and again this is on that small size, we do see that in fact we were able to save a little bit of spacing there, just removing those out. So again, a lot of playing around with it and watching the styling. So it's always a good idea to be able to refresh and check out the styling. But this is essentially a good starting point for creating this navigation menu. And with this starting point, you can begin to build out your custom content and custom design for your web templates using CSS, combining CSS with HTML.